الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala we're going to be finishing our book which is Usul al-Sunnah lil-Humaydee, the foundations of the Sunnah by al-Humaydee rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. We only have two topics to speak about today. So the first one will be about the Khawarij. We're going to speak inshallah ta'ala about the Khawarij. We're going to briefly speak also about their opposite, which are al-Murji'ah. And we will be speaking also, inshallah ta'ala, about which ones of the pillars of Islam does one become a kafir if he leaves them or if he does not accomplish them, apply them, etc. So we start, inshallah ta'ala, asking Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us sincerity and His assistance and help. So he says here, rahimahullah, and that we do not say, as the Khawarij do, that whoever commits a major sin has committed disbelief. And we do not declare a person disbeliever because of a sin that they commit. And here is an important point he's speaking about. Al-Khawarij, the sect of the Khawarij, we must know that they appeared, or the first one of them, let's say, appeared in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was narrated in an authentic hadith that a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and that he told him, "I'dil," he told him, "Be just, for you were not just in what you divided between us." And he's speaking about the bounties of war. Umar radiallahu anh said to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, "Let me strike his neck." And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said that some people of his offspring will appear afterwards, will appear in the next generations, and that they will be just like him basically, and these are the Khawarij as explained by the scholars. So they appeared after some time. They appeared in the time of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, in the time of Uthman, and they used to make takfir of Uthman. They used to claim that Uthman radiallahu anhu was no longer a Muslim, he was a kafir, that he fell in disbelief. They claimed the same about Ali, about some other companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum wa ardahum. And the Prophet ﷺ, in multiple hadiths, we can speak about that briefly, in multiple hadiths sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he gave descriptions of the Khawarij. He said, for example, they are immature. He said in some other hadiths that they are young. He said that in some other hadiths, he described them as being people of worship, people who worship Allah Azza wa Jalla a lot, that even the Sahaba radiallahu anhum would be surprised by their worship and would see their own worship as being nothing compared to the worship of the Khawarij. And a lot of stuff, a lot of other hadiths were speaking about the Khawarij and their description. And what's important to keep in mind is that, as the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, and this is a characteristic they have throughout the years. So basically, we always see that the Khawarij, usually, it's young people who are very excited, who are immature, who don't have the knowledge of religion. As the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, he said they read the Quran, but it doesn't go more far than, how do you call it? More far, basically. It doesn't enter their hearts, basically. I forgot the word that was used, but it doesn't enter their hearts. And the explanation of that is that they do not understand the Quran in reality. They recite the Quran, they read it a lot, but they do not understand in reality the Quran and its teachings. They do not understand what was reported, what was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it should be understood. And one thing that Imam Malik done, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, in his Muwatta, is that he spoke or he narrated a hadith telling us that Umar radiallahu anhu and his son Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma learned Surah Al-Baqarah in 8 years. And right after, Imam Malik rahimahullah, right after that, he narrated the hadith that speaks about the Khawarij and that speaks about the fact that the Quran doesn't enter their hearts and they do not understand it. And they read a lot of the Quran. Basically, what Imam Malik rahimahullah is trying to tell us is that the Quran should be taken and we should learn it the same way the Sahaba learned it. If we want it to impact us in the same way it impacted the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, and taking it very fast, learning it very fast without in reality understanding its deep meanings, without letting it impact our heart and change our person, in reality, that is not what's meant from the revelation of the Quran. That is not what should be our goal. And that will result in reality in the opposite effect. Instead of the Quran guiding us, it will be misguiding us, just like it happened to the Khawarij. May Allah Azza wa Jal preserve us and every Muslim. So the Khawarij, if we want to have a description of them, because we must know that the Khawarij throughout the years, throughout time, from a time to another, for example, they will change. They do not always have the same characteristics or keep the same characteristics. An example of that, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that a characteristic that is from the ones of the Khawarij is that they shave their head. They always shave their head. And if we look nowadays, the ones who are Khawarij in our time do not shave their head. So in reality, there is some characteristics that they used to have that they do not necessarily keep with time. Another characteristic that they had is that before, the Khawarij used to make takfir of anyone who makes a major sin. If someone lies before, they would make his takfir. If someone drinks alcohol, if someone commits zina, for example, they would make his takfir. Nowadays, the Khawarij of our time, they do not make takfir of someone who makes sins. So they do not have this characteristic anymore. But they have a characteristic that we will find, or two characteristics in reality, that we will find in every single Khariji throughout the time, from the beginning of Islam until today. The first characteristic is that they make takfir without a valid reason. They make takfir without a valid reason. So this is what we call in Arabic التكفير بغير مكفر. They will make takfir of someone either because of a major sin like they used to do before, or because of something that is sometimes permissible, or because sometimes even someone who will be doing something that's obligatory, they will make takfir of them. For example, they make takfir of some Islamic countries, and I'm not speaking about the so-called secular Islamic countries that we have today, but they will make takfir of some Islamic groups, Islamic countries, for doing business or because they do business with the kuffar. In reality, this business they are doing might be an obligation upon them because they have to feed the people that are under their rule. But some of the Khawarij nowadays make their takfir because of that. Or they would make their takfir because of something that is recommended, for example. So this is in reality a characteristic that we will find in the Khawarij throughout the time, which is making takfir without a valid reason, without a valid mukaffir, without any valid nullifier of Islam. Another characteristic, a second one that they have, is that they fight the people of Islam and they leave the people of Al-Awthan. So they leave the idol worshippers, they leave the kuffar, and they do not fight them. Or at least they do not fight them the same way they fight the Muslims. So most of their energy, most of their efforts, most of their fight is targeted towards the Muslims rather than it being targeted towards the disbelievers. And this is taken from a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, يَقْتُلُونَ أَهْلَ الْإِسْلَامِ. They kill the people of Islam, وَيَدَعُونَ أَهْلَ الْأَوْثَانِ. And they leave the people of idol worshipping. And this is also what happens nowadays. If you see there is some sects of Khawarij, their only goal in life is to attack Muslims, attack Muslim groups, raise shubuhat, raise ambiguities towards them or against them, make people doubt about them, etc. So their goal is to fight the Muslims. And when we speak about fight, it doesn't mean always fighting with a sword or with a gun. It could be also an ideological fight, meaning their enemy, their mere enemy, will be the Muslims instead of being the kuffar or the idol worshippers. And this is a characteristic they still have until today. A third characteristic we could add that the Khawarij would always have, we must understand that if someone falls in a nullifier of Islam, they are not necessarily directly a kafir because of that. They are not necessarily directly a kafir because of that. They can be excused. There is some excuses that are valid and can make the person not become a kafir, even if they fell in a nullifier of Islam. And this is also taken from the Quran and Sunnah. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Quran that we will not punish, we were not to punish any people until we send them a messenger. The scholars took from that in reality the messenger comes to teach the people the religion. So if the people are ignorant, then Allah Azza wa Jal said in this verse that He will not punish them. So the first excuse that can be valid is the excuse of ignorance. And this is, by the way, the aqidah of the Salaf. A proof from the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, he spoke about the story of a man. That man told his children after he dies, he told them to, how do you call that? to burn him, sorry. So he said to them to burn him and to throw some of his ashes in the land, some in the sea, some in the air, etc. So he said that to them so that Allah Azza wa Jal will not regather his body, because he was scared of the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, is capable of everything, and he gathered his body again. And he asked him, he told him, why did you do what you've done? And the man responded saying, oh Allah, I was scared of you. I was scared that you would punish me. And Allah Azza wa Jal, as said by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the hadith, Allah Azza wa Jal made him or let him enter in paradise. So we take from that that in reality, Allah Azza wa Jal excused the person who disbelieved in one of the most clear attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is the fact that he is capable of doing everything. This man thought that Allah Azza wa Jal was not capable of doing everything, and Allah Azza wa Jal still excused him because of his ignorance. So thinking that Allah Azza wa Jal is not capable of everything is a nullifier of Islam. But Allah Azza wa Jal excused this man because of his ignorance. Also, a proof from the Aqidah of the Salaf, in the book Aqidatul Raziyain, Aqidat al-Raziyain, the Aqidah of the two Razis, so Abu Hatim al-Razi and Abu Zur al-Razi, two scholars of Hadith from the Salaf's time, they had a book of Aqidah. And this book of Aqidah was narrated by the son of one of them, so Ibn Abi Hatim, the son of Abu Hatim. He narrated this book and he asked them some questions and wrote the book based on the responses of these two shuyukh that he had. One of them was his father. In this book, we can find that they say clearly, both of them, that the Muslims can be excused by their ignorance. They say it in a very clear way in the book. So this also shows us that the Salaf used to excuse people who fall in a nullifier of Islam if they are ignorant. So having said all that, what's the link with the Khawarij? The link is that the Khawarij throughout time, they do not excuse people by ignorance. And still until today, they still apply this. They still do not excuse people if they fall in a nullifier of Islam, even though they're ignorant. For example, if someone goes and votes, for example, we must know that voting for a democratic party or any of that, this is an act of kufr. This is a nullifier of Islam. Now, some scholars gave permission to vote for the lesser evil, like, for example, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen. Some scholars said that if someone follows that opinion, then there's no problem with that. There's no problem. But the asl, the initial state, is that voting for democracy, voting to apply democracy, is kufr. It is a nullifier of Islam. The Khawarij, for example, they would say, as one sheikh in Turkey, may Allah forgive him, he said that every single person who voted in Turkey is a kafir. So he said there is approximately 70 million Turkish people, Turkish population. He said 50 million of them, it's the number of the ones who voted, he said 50 million of them are kuffar. And this is a big, huge mistake. And this is in reality a belief that the Khawarij hold. We're not saying that he's a Khariji. Inshallah, it's only a mistake. May Allah guide him and forgive him. But this is a belief of the Khawarij. In reality, if the people go and vote, for example, the Muslims that we see in the West and the people who are like that, when they go and vote, they have no idea that voting is kufr. They have no idea of the reality of democracy. They have no idea of the reality of what they are doing. So they are excused because of their ignorance. We have no problem with that. And this is, as we said, the aqidah of the Salaf. But the aqidah of the Khawarij is that anyone who commits a nullifier of Islam, then he is not to be excused and he becomes directly a kafir, a disbeliever. So these are three characteristics that the Khawarij hold throughout the time, from the beginning of their existence until today. And the Khawarij, we could describe them also of being people who make the da'ira of Islam, who make the circle of Muslims very small. So the Khawarij, they exclude Muslims from the circle of Islam. And the Murji'ah, who are the opposite of the Khawarij, they make non-Muslims, they make kuffar enter in the circle of Islam. So we have two opposites here. We have the Khawarij who make the circle too small, excluding people who have the right to be in it, who are Muslims, claiming they are not Muslims. And we have their opposite who are Al-Murji'ah. Al-Murji'ah, they make the circle of Islam too big, including people in it who have no right to be in it, who are the kuffar. So we're speaking about the Murji'ah because they are the exact opposite of the Khawarij. And we have Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah who are in the middle. The circle of Islam for Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah is of the correct size. Anyone who's Muslim is included in it. Anyone who's a kafir is not included in it without any extremism, without any takfir, without valid reason, or without any including, like al-Murji'a do, without including anyone in the circle of Islam who is not a Muslim. As simple as that. He continues saying here, Kufr is only in abandoning the 5 concerning which Allah's Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam said. Islam is built upon 5, bearing witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam is Allah's Messenger, to establish prayer, to give zakat, to fast in Ramadan, and to make hajj to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we must know that the 5 pillars of Islam, the scholars differed about them. The scholars differed about the kufr of the one who leaves the 5 pillars of Islam, or one of them. So we're going to take one pillar by one, inshallah ta'ala, and explain each one and the ruling of leaving each one of them. The first pillar, as the Prophet ﷺ said, it is bearing witness that La ilaha illallah and Muhammadun Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. By consensus of the Muslims, by consensus of all the ummah, of all the scholars, anyone who leaves this first pillar, anyone who doesn't say the Shahada, anyone who goes against the Shahada, anyone who disbelieves in the Shahada and leaves this first pillar, then he is not a Muslim. He is a disbeliever by ijma', by consensus of the Muslims. So for the first pillar, we have no problem with that. Anyone who leaves it is a kafir. Now we have the second pillar. The Prophet ﷺ said right after the Shahada, he said, وَإِقَامِ الصَّلَاةِ, to establish prayer, establishing the obligatory prayers. Here we had a difference of opinion, but in reality we had an ijma', we had the consensus of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. It was narrated by some of the Salaf that the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum agreed upon the fact that anyone who leaves prayer is a kafir. Ibn Hazm narrated that he found more than 10 of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum having the opinion that anyone who leaves one prayer and prays it out of its time without a valid excuse, he is a kafir, he is a disbeliever. 10 of the Sahaba, more than 10 of the Sahaba, Ibn Hazm narrated that more than 10 of the Sahaba had this opinion. So this shows us in reality that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, their opinion and what they agreed upon is that anyone who leaves the prayer is a kafir, he is a disbeliever. And people often say that the only ones who say that he's a disbeliever is the Hanbali madhab, it's Imam Ahmad. And they say that the 3 other madhabs, they say that anyone who leaves prayer is not a kafir. And this is very inexact in reality. This is very inexact. They claim that Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i, they say that he's not a kafir. But it is narrated from them, from, for example, Al-Muzani and Al-Tahawi, excuse me, he narrated from Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i, they narrated from them that they used to view anyone who leaves prayer as a kafir. And in reality, the ones who came after them, who were scholars of the Maliki and Shafi'i madhab, it is them who viewed the one who leaves prayer as not being a kafir. It's not the Imams of the madhab. So saying that Imam Shafi'i, Malik, etc. didn't view it as a kafir, didn't view him as a kafir, this is very inexact. And Imam Abu Hanifa, it's the only one of the 4 Imams in reality who said that anyone who leaves prayer, then he is not a kafir. He's the only one of the 4 Imams holding that opinion. And also there is tons and tons of the Imams of the Salaf who held the same opinion as Imam Ahmad, which is that anyone who leaves prayer is a kafir. And also, as we said, what's even more important is the ijma', the consensus of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum on the kufr, on the disbelief of anyone who leaves prayer. The third pillar, he says here, the third pillar, the Prophet ﷺ said, to give zakat. Now, giving zakat, if someone withholds giving zakat, is he a kafir or no? The correct opinion, inshallah ta'ala, as said by Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ulwan, is that he's not a kafir. Because the Prophet ﷺ, it was narrated from him in Sahih Muslim, that he said, speaking about the one who withholds giving zakat, that he will be either in paradise or hellfire. And the Sheikh explained that if he will be either in paradise or hellfire, then this means that he is not a kafir. Because we know for sure, for certain, that anyone who dies as a disbeliever will never see the paradise. So if he dies withholding zakat and he might go to paradise, this means that he is still a Muslim and he is not a disbeliever, simply. Now, in regards to the apostates that Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu fought, the ones who withheld giving zakat, we must know that their ruling is very different. Because first of all, most of them, they denied the obligation of zakat. They didn't only withhold giving zakat. And denying anything that's in the Quran and Sunnah is kufr. If someone says there is no such thing as prayer that we have to do, he's a kafir. If someone says there is no such thing as hijab in Islam, he's a kafir. Anyone says, for example, there is no such thing as hajj in Islam, he's a kafir, etc. So they denied the obligation of giving zakat, first of all. Second of all, some scholars said that they withheld giving zakat and they fought for not giving zakat. They fought to not give the zakat. So their ruling changes once again. If they fight to not give it, some scholars, they say they become kuffar automatically. So they didn't simply withhold zakat. If you withhold giving the zakat, you're not a kafir. But rather, some of them disbelieved in it. They said to Abu Bakr, we used to give this to the Prophet ﷺ, now he's dead. We're not going to give it to you anymore. So they disbelieved in the obligation of zakat after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. And some of them, they followed the false prophets like Musallama. So some of them, they completely left Islam. Some others also completely disbelieved and didn't want to have anything to do with Islam anymore. So they are not simply people who withheld giving zakat. Rather, they committed other nullifiers of Islam. So to summarize all that, not giving zakat, withholding giving zakat doesn't make someone a kafir. Fourth pillar, the Prophet ﷺ said, and to fast in Ramadan. Anyone who doesn't fast in Ramadan, he is sinful. He is not committing a nullifier of Islam, and he doesn't become a kafir. And fifth pillar, last one, and to make hajj to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal. And also, not making hajj does not make someone a kafir. It makes someone a sinner. It doesn't make them a kafir, and Allah knows best. Second topic, he says here. He says, as of three of them, then do not dispute the one who abandons them. The one who does not give the testimony of faith, as we said, this one is a kafir. Secondly, nor does he pray, as we said, this one is also a kafir. Thirdly, nor does he fast, for no one of these are delayed from its time. Thirdly, we said for fasting that he doesn't become a kafir. Anyone who doesn't fast the month of Ramadan is not a kafir. If he doesn't, of course, believe that he doesn't have to fast. Anyone who disbelieves in the obligation of fasting Ramadan, he's a kafir, even if he fasts it. So the mere belief or the mere disbelief that he has in his heart makes him a kafir. As we said, the one who doesn't commit the action and accomplish the fasting, he's not a kafir. So he continues saying, for none of these are delayed from its time, nor does it suffice one to make them up after deliberately neglecting to perform them at their time. A very important point we must keep in mind for the shahada. A very important point we must keep in mind for the shahada. And subhanallah, there's more and more Muslims falling in this problem in reality. If someone comes to you and tells you they want to become Muslim, then you tell them directly, at the moment, you tell them to say the shahada. You don't start telling them, no, you should search more about Islam and come back tomorrow, and you're not ready yet, and all this. Because subhanallah, that person could die after 5 minutes. If he would have said the shahada, he would become a Muslim and he would die as a Muslim. And if he wouldn't say the shahada because of you, then know that Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said, if someone comes to you and says he wants to say the shahada and you tell them later, then you become a kafir. You become a kafir yourself. You leave Islam if you do such an action. Subhanallah. Why do you leave Islam? Because you're causing kufr in reality. Anyone who propagates kufr is a kafir. And you're causing and propagating kufr in this case. So, subhanallah, it's very simple. I don't know why some people have trouble with that, or they think they're intelligent, they think they know better than anyone. If someone comes to you, he wants to become a Muslim, then simply let him become a Muslim. And some, subhanallah, brother was telling me last time, someone came to me and he was telling me, I want to become a Muslim, and he was extremely interested. But I told him not to become a Muslim and you should go and do more research and you should come back in a month or something like that. So why are you doing all these efforts in the batil, subhanallah, in the false? Why are you propagating falsehood in this way? What does it cost you to just let him become a Muslim? And then if he has to learn more, you teach him more. He can be learning at the same time that he's a Muslim. He doesn't need to be a kafir to learn. He can become a Muslim and then learn whatever he want to learn. Why do people, subhanallah, want to propagate kufr? Subhanallah. We see no one, subhanAllah, or very few people doing efforts to make people enter in Islam and doing da'wah and everything. And instead of helping them, some of the Muslims are helping people staying in kufr. And they're propagating kufr, subhanAllah. And they're telling kuffar, instead of telling them to become Muslims, they tell them to stay kuffar. Really, wallahi, some people, how they think, how their brain works, it's a mystery, wallahi, subhanAllah. So he continues saying here, rahmatullah alayh, that none of these are delayed from its time. So the shahada is not to be delayed from its time. The prayer is to be prayed in specific times. And fasting Ramadan, also fasting Ramadan is 1 month that comes each year. So we have to fast in that month. You cannot fast before or after that month. Now he's going to speak about zakat and hajj. He says here, as for zakat, whenever he gives it, it suffices him. Yet he is sinful in withholding it. So the zakat, you have to give it in its time. And here in reality, he's speaking about some fiqh issues. It's more related to fiqh than aqidah, but we're going to briefly speak about it. So he says, zakat, you have to give it when it's due. In reality, you cannot withhold zakat. And anyone who withholds zakat is sinful. Why is he sinful? Because as he says here in some lines after, zakat is the right of the poor Muslims, which he has withheld from them. And hence he is sinful until it reaches them. So the zakat that you have in reality, that zakat that you're holding, it's not your money. It's the money of the poor Muslims that is in your possession right now. So you have to give it as soon as possible. And if you withhold it, then you're sinful because it is not yours. You have no right of withholding it. Now for hajj, the last of the pillars, he says here, and as for hajj, then for whoever it is obligatory and he is capable of performing it, then it becomes binding on him. But it is not binding on him in that very year, such that he has no other choice. Whenever he performs it, then he has fulfilled it, and he is not sinful in delaying it as he would be in delaying zakat. In reality, what he just said here, there is a difference of opinion between the scholars about it. Some of the madhabs, they say that whenever he can do the hajj, then it becomes obligatory at that moment to do the hajj. And if he delays it, he is sinful for that delay. And some other madhabs, like the Hanbali madhab, they say no. They say even if he has the capacity of doing the hajj right now, he doesn't have to do it now. He can delay it 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, etc. And he is not sinful if he delays it. And of course, to be sure that we're on the right side, inshallah, anyone who has the capacity of doing hajj, then he must do it as soon as possible, for one doesn't know when he's going to be dead and when he's going to die. He continues saying, as for hajj, it is between him and his Lord. Whenever he performs it, it is fulfilled. If he dies while he is able to perform it without having performed hajj, he asks to be returned to the dunya to perform hajj. And it is obligatory on his family to perform hajj on his behalf. And we hope that would be fulfilled on his behalf, as if he had a debt and he was repaid on his behalf after he died. In reality, we must know that the debts that someone could have, we have a first type of debts, which are debts that are between the slave and Allah Azza wa Jal, like hajj, for example. And we have debts that are between the slave and the other slaves, so between the humans. For example, a debt of money or a debt of something he was keeping that's not his, or something like that, something he borrowed, etc. So we have finished the book, alhamdulillah. We finished it with his saying here, speaking about hajj. And inshallah ta'ala, the next course, we're going to be starting another book, probably another book of aqidah to complete our understanding. Then we will pass, inshallah, to another science, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal. Jazakumullahu khair. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.